That is so beautiful.
Thank you so much.
It's a tremendous pleasure and honor for me to be here this evening reading with David Nichols. And before I started reading, I just wanted to thank my translator, Josepina Oneto. When I was informed that the theme of this year's festival was simple, complex, I thought of an expression in English, to make a long story short. This remark precedes a simple account of a complex story. It indicates that the story will be told in the most abbreviated, essential way, omitting any unnecessary details or information. And I realize that good fiction does just the opposite of this. It makes a short story long. It adds rather than subtracts. And so what I plan to read tonight is a variation on this theme. I've begun with a simple note, a message from one person to another, which suggests a narrative, but does not tell the story. And then I have tried to tell the story, which is, like so many stories, complex. Simple. Dear X, yes, I can see you. You must arrive on the morning of February 13th at precisely 8 o'clock. It is important that you come to me with a mind and heart free of doubt and rancor. Otherwise, there is no possibility. The nearest city is Sodenklaya. It is about 10 miles distant. There is a daily train from Kuplo that arrives in the evening. The hotel is called the Grand Imperial, although it is neither of those things. They will arrange a car for you to come here to me. Your husband must remain at the hotel. Try to remember how simple life is. It is by making things complex that we lose our way and forfeit our well-being. Yours, in faith and hope and love, Brother Emmanuel. Complex. Evening descended with an unnerving abruptness, like a curtain hurriedly lowered on an amateur theatrical gone horribly awry. And then the man noticed the darkness was not the result of the sun setting, but of the train entering a dense forest, leaving behind the bright open fields of snow it had traveled across all afternoon. The fir trees, tall and thick, crowded closely along the tracks, like children pressing themselves up against a window to get a better view of some gruesome accident in the street. His wife sat on the seat across from him. They were the only two in the small wood-paneled carriage. She was reading a book she had found abandoned in the waiting room of the train station they had passed through that morning. She had been delighted to find this book, ancient as it was, for it was in English, and the novel she had been reading for all of the journey had been stolen, along with her bag and everything in it, in the market of the city they had stayed in the preceding night. Someone, so quickly did it occur that it was impossible to distinguish the thief's gender, someone collided violently with her in front of a fishmonger's stall. She had fallen onto the cement floor into a puddle of frigid, fishy water, and by the time she had managed to stand up, the thief had disappeared into the crowd. Until that moment, she had been trying to find the market charming, for the circumstances of her life required her to discover and appreciate any beauty or delight she encountered. But this market was singularly without charm, for it contained nothing but fish and meat and root vegetables, and the fish did not look fresh, and the meat was not meat, but organs and brains and feet and lips and hearts, and the vegetables were all winter vegetables, roots and tubers, and other colorless things that had been savagely yanked from their cold earthen beds. She had seen in the distance one stall that sold hothouse flowers and had hastened towards it, desperate to find something that did not entirely turn one away from life. Her husband had noticed their artifice before she did and had tried to restrain her, but she had pulled free of him and run toward the colored brightness of the flowers, wanting to bury her face in their fragrant petal softness, buy an armful of them and carry it with her like a bride, like a diva in the footlights. But the nearer she drew to them, the less real they looked. They were plastic. Not even silk, she thought. I could have touched them if they were silk. And so it seemed only appropriate that one would be mugged in such a market, pushed onto the cold cement floor and kicked. Of all the things in her bag that had been stolen, she most regretted the loss of the novel. It was almost as good as falling asleep reading the novel. Reading was the only thing that took her out of herself, out of the body she could no longer endure. And so when she had seen the book, it was called Certain Persons, in the station waiting room that morning, she had pounced upon it and had submerged herself in its damp, faded pages for the entire day. For some time after the darkness fell or was entered, the woman continued to read. Or perhaps she had not been reading, but simply regarding the book, thought her husband, for he could not recall her having turned a page in the longest time. Suddenly she looked up from her book at the dark, rushing windows of the carriage and asked, "Is there a light?" "I don't see one," her husband said. "You'd think there'd be a light," she said. "Yes," he said, "you'd think." She sighed dispiritedly. They had been traveling for days, first by plane and then by train and ferry, and now train again, for their destination was a place in the far north of a northern country and not easily gained. Their journey was like a journey from a prior century, a matter of days rather than hours, the earth serious and real beneath them, constantly insisting on its vastness. The woman turned away from the window and looked back down at the book that lay in her lap, as if she could read in the dark. She gently touched the page with her fingers, as if they were braille. "What is your book about?" her husband asked. Instead of replying, she touched her reflection in the window, which the darkness outside had just revealed. For a moment she said nothing, just watched her reflection hurtling along the dark scrim of pines. "About," she finally said, "in what sense do you mean?" He did not answer, because he did not like to indulge her contrariness. They had both fallen asleep and were simultaneously awoken by a peculiar sensation, stillness. The train had stopped. Outside the carriage window they could see, through the burled fog that their collective breaths had condensed upon the glass, an empty platform and a building. It was silent except for the soft, tickling sift of snow against the glass. "Is this it?" she asked. "I don't know," he said. "This must be it," she said. "I don't see any sign," he said. She rubbed a messy circle on the window and said, "No, this must be it," he said. She was still rubbing, making the circle larger, but nothing helpful was revealed, just a bit more of the wooden platform on which one lamp separated a conical swath of snow from the huge surrounding darkness. He stood up and opened the carriage door. "Don't go," she said. "But this must be it," he said. "It can't be," she said. "It's not a real station. There's no town, nothing." He stepped out onto the platform, disturbing the perfect blanket of snow. He felt like a barbarian. Once its perfection had been defiled, he knew he must continue, for a hairline crack on a beautiful piece of china is more upsetting than the same piece of china shattered on the floor.